This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you in part by Xero. Xero is a powerful cloud accounting software that improves efficiencies across your practice. With all client data stored on a single unified ledger, you and your clients can easily access and collaborate on the same set of books. Xero's advisor tools and automation solutions reduce time-consuming manual tasks and put data entry on autopilot. Work faster and more efficiently than ever before with Xero. Visit xero.com/accounting insiders to learn more. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast. My name is Gary DeHart. I am the publisher of Insightful Accountant and the host of the Accounting Insiders podcast. My guest today is Roman Kepczyk with Right Networks. I said that correctly, right? Kepczyk?
Well, Kepczyk is close enough.
All right, Kepczyk. All right. Well, I was close.
Everyone does that. That's okay.
When we were in the green room, so to speak, right?
Yeah, just call me Roman.
Okay. Yeah,
much easier.
Yeah, call me Gary, call you Roman, we're good. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so we're just gonna have a little discussion today, cloud computing, which my first thing is, it's all cloud now, right? So, but before we dive in, Roman, just share a little bit about your background. You and I have crossed paths a couple of times years ago. So, so just bring me up to speed, and then just our listeners, let them know who you are, kind of share your credentials, because you've been a tech guy in accounting for a long time.
Yeah, well, as you know, I'm a CPA, and the first 10 years of my career, I was a partner in a large regional firm in Arizona. And while the first half was actually processing tax returns and doing accounting service work, I transitioned as microcomputers, at that time they were called, PCs were called that, came into the profession to where I rolled out networks in 14 of our offices. And by virtue of setting up the CD-ROMs and all those to do research, I became tagged as the computer guy. And so from that point, we were part of a very large association of accounting firms. And other firms were saying, well, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? And the next thing I knew, I was a consultant to all these other firms, which naturally transitioned to me being a full-time consultant, where I primarily am an outsourced IT partner to CPA firms. I've worked with about 425 firms over the last 26 years. Starting from 9 members up to, I've worked with 30 of the top 100, just providing insights on what are the best applications to use, what's the IT infrastructure that should be there, what are the trends that are happening. One of my responsibilities is I'm on an advisory member to a group called the CPA Firm Management Association. Okay, and we do an annual survey that outlines the trends of what the medium and larger size firms, like firms that are 20 members and up, are buying and changing. And because I analyze that survey, I can see exactly what they're adopting and why. And then when I go into the firms, you know, I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt also. So my main focus is looking at processes, everything from tax production, from ingress all the way to the review, to the scanning, to the delivery of the tax return and the finance invoices at the back end for tax audit. And then right now, you know, advisory is the biggest thing. So we've expanded the time we spend on CAS, which is the technology stack that the firms are using to support their clients' advisory services.
Gotcha. So when you started that outsourced as the IT guy, was that still with the firm, or did you separate from the firm and just go on your own?
I separated from the firm and basically went out there because I already had clients that said, you know, I was working with helping them, but not for fee. And so over time, I was able to basically develop a process of how to work through the workflow of every single firm, every step they take. Again, you know, from ingress to preparation to review to quality control and all those steps. That's what the Lean Six Sigma brought to the table. Making sure, you know, you do it right, and you do it right now. And we found that is the best way to create efficiency in firms today.
Okay. All right. So part of what we're going to talk about is, like I alluded to in my opening there, was cloud computing. Do we even need to use that cloud term anymore, or or cloud accounting? Should we just call it in the podcast, right? They dropped cloud. But so should we just be talking about accounting?
Yeah, the reality is actually all of us are using cloud applications.
Right.
You know, from a personal standpoint, all of our banking, all of our personal email is all online. On the firm side, if you think about it, research was one of the first to go to the cloud. Then, of course, we were doing banking and accounting services. But as the vendors started rolling out more and more cloud applications, cloud-based, and firms realized that it was cheaper and more secure to go to an enterprise level cloud provider, they transitioned applications one by one. Everything from document management to workflow. Very commonly, we see like secure email solutions or portal solutions. Those are all cloud. So there's been a definite trend towards firms putting more and more into the cloud, just because that's the way that application is delivered to us.
Right. Now, do you have any specific trends or firsthand experience of what you can share? Because you said you do that survey with CPA, FMA.
Yep.
Any trends specific to accounting and other professions?
Yep. And within accounting, the CPFMA does the survey every 2 years. So they do hardware 1 year, applications the next.
Right.
And what we've seen is since 2018, back then it was 77% of the firms had the majority of their applications inside of the practice. And today that number is down to, I think, 19%. So what we
Wow.
see is it's been a significant change. So where did the firms go? Where did the applications go? Well, back then, when I started my consulting, we were saying firms don't have adequate IT in-house to be able to do security disaster recovery. So we recommended if you have a strong IT leader and a team, you should put your infrastructure into a co-location facility. So they would literally pick up their servers, put it in a enterprise class data center that provided, redundant internet, power, and security. And what we found out is only about 9% of the firms today do that. And those are primarily medium and larger firms that have an IT department. Then the other assumption was that, well, we're going to the cloud providers, Thomson's Virtual Office or CCH Access Suite, or QBO Online. And what's interesting is when we talk about the majority of the applications, only about 10% of the firms have done that, according to the latest survey. So
Okay.
where'd the rest go? 63%, or just under 2/3, have basically gone with enterprise class hosting providers that focus on the accounting profession. These are vendors that understand the requirements of busy season, the importance of having printers work on a Sunday for a partner or scanners working. And so the big trend, like I said, is customized cloud hosting providers like Right Networks. Often in result that the firms either don't have the IT personnel to build it themselves, or what's happening is they've gone to a best of breed suite of applications rather than all within one suite. And that's what we're actually, one of the big trends in the last 4 years is firms are going to best of breed applications to meet specific needs, everything from portals to e-signature tools that are coming out that honestly the non-major vendors have provided better solutions that are more cost-effective, secure, and make it easier for the clients of the firms to interact with the firm.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're seeing more, just to recap, you're seeing fewer firms are taking a kind of one-stop approach or one technology approach, I guess might be the best way to put it, and going to a Right Networks or similar type of firm who can say, you know what, this is the best product. Here's the best product. Here's the best product. We can pull all these together for you.
Yeah, with the notable exception of Microsoft Office, that's the best of breed. They actually they're the best suite application, and they're the ones that actually created the suite concept for Thomson Reuters and CCH and Intuit Lacerte. And they've been able to deliver remarkable capabilities inside of the Microsoft Office. But the other major vendors, what's happened is they've tried to integrate products into the suite while they're building it. Oftentimes they bought other products from the outside and bolted them on, and they just didn't work as effectively, neither from the firm's perspective or the client's perspective, which found some of these tools very kludgy and difficult to work. And so that opened the door for these third-party providers to come in, products on a portal solution like SureLink, for instance, or email solutions like Right Signature, C Paperless, Safe Send, Safe Sign, that were easy for firms to adopt as well as for clients to adopt. And If you look at the development of all applications now, it's all 100% in the cloud, just because it's easier to maintain, support, and roll out. So we see firms going out there, and when they study the environment and look at applications out there, these best of breed applications are now being touted higher, being seen as more effective. Clients are loving and quicker adoption, as opposed to waiting for the major vendors to give us a comprehensive, complete suite.
Well, that's interesting. Now, do you have a comparison of outside the profession, outside of accounting profession, as far as adoption?
Yeah, what we see is it depends on what size of firms you're looking at, or companies. Organizations that are any medium or larger tend to go with enterprise class solutions. I mean, if you think about, one of the first things everyone went to was hosted Exchange. Microsoft Outlook is one of the dominant products. Google, Gmail's another dominant product. Those are cloud-based apps. The one difference with the Microsoft Office as an enterprise tool is it integrates not only email, but all the Office suite applications and the collaboration tools like Microsoft Teams out there. And so in the enterprises up, we see that there's probably 95, 97% adoption for those large organizations. In the smaller companies, what we tend to see is the first application they go to the cloud is banking and payroll. And then if they want to integrate their banking and payroll with an accounting product, you have to put it in the cloud to do well. Now that means either it's going to be QuickBooks Online with a API and application program interface that takes that data, imports it in, or QuickBooks Desktop. Even though it's a desktop product, at Right Networks we host over 200,000 of these clients, so that they appear to be in the cloud and they can integrate with those APIs and the other tools in the cloud. So by putting an application, a desktop application, into the cloud, it gets a lot of the same benefits of those purely cloud-based applications. Okay. So we see these firms building their suite based on their clients' accounting products, and then adding primarily cloud-based applications, so that when updates are made, they natively integrate and flow through. Even though there's changes made that break those links, usually it's identified by the industry pretty quick and then fixed very quickly.
Right. Okay. And so Right Networks, how is Right? So people are certainly, as you've said before, adoption of cloud it's not really, ooh, do I have anything in the cloud? Everyone has something in the cloud, right? So
it's here.
It's not it. And so how has the like a QBO and a Xero, have tools like that made kind of the acceptance of cloud-based products, I guess, easier within the profession?
Yeah, absolutely. The cloud-based accounting applications, we try to promote firms going to those because all the development of the new applications, the new APIs, is all happening strictly in the cloud. You have to look at it from the vendor perspective, that it's much easier for them to provide support, to help the client implement things with a standardized platform, as opposed to every computer being a different kind and everything. And so when we talk with our firms, we mentioned that they have to develop their advisory services, advisory practice, and it's built around accounting information, which you share with the client. In the olden days of on-prem software, we'd have to send in information, it would be processed, and then like a week or two later, we'd send them financial statements. Today in the cloud, you can do real-time advisory by having the accounting application in the cloud and then attaching information resources. Usually the first thing everyone attaches is a payable system. And the most common product we see in all the surveys is Bill. Used to be called Bill.com, and I still call it Bill.com. But that allows, when clients make payments, it natively integrates into the accounting product. And so if you're being advisory to that client, you can do cash flow projections almost in real time once that data is updated. After payables, usually the next thing for our clients build in their tech stack, or firms build for their clients, is payroll with the ancillary services of timesheets and with expense reports. And today there's you build a suite of applications that allow your clients to do their payroll live, to using the timesheet system. The salespeople can enter their expense reports in there, and so as that information is entered, it's automatically updated and integrated into the accounting system, which allows you to have financial statements that are near real time. I say near real time because sometimes the accountant has to evoke a process to import those credit card statements or import those payables.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have automated processes to do that, you're building a accounting business information system that's near real time, and you're providing advisory services overseeing that information, helping that client make better decisions with the information they have available right now. And with the advent of all these generative AI solutions, it's only to become more exciting because we're seeing that being integrated into all kinds of accounting applications as well as the third-party applications that link into our systems.
Right. So you said AP is the number one, first adoption, and then payroll and expense. Is that if you were building out a tech stack from the ground up, or maybe it's you from the clouds down, but if you were building out a tech stack, is that where you would start?
Okay, for building an advisory tech stack, we would start out by analyzing what accounting products that your clients are using. So if I'm a firm and I have, let's say I focus on not-for-profits, and most of them are using either Blackbaud or QuickBooks, I would pick those two products. If it was an enterprise or larger company, it might be Sage Intacct. But you start with the core accounting product. Mm-hmm. Usually payables is the next thing because every company has payables. And the break-even point is somewhere around 25 or 30 payables, that it's actually cheaper to go to the cloud version versus to continually to write checks that's out there. Okay. Then what happens is everyone has to do payroll, and no one should be doing their own in-house payroll anymore. You should be using key products. We have, according to the surveys, ADP, Paychex, Gusto, those are Paylocity. Those are the kind of big ones. But find out what your clients are using and then become expert at integrating that data. As I mentioned, there's some ancillary products that make it more effective. So if a client, let's say, is a contractor and they have people that are required to keep timesheets, then you figure out what API product links to that. And so, for instance, in the Intuit world, T-Sheets is probably the most prevalent timesheet product. Yeah. Now, if you have a dedicated construction company, oftentimes they have a timekeeping product as well, but that integrates to specific payroll products. So that might be the Paychex ADP. And then the other part is expense reports. We all have heard horror stories of the shoebox that comes in and missing receipts. And so if you can train your clients to use a tool like Tally, Expensify, Concur, where they can take a photograph of the receipt and then submit it, it automatically builds the expense report. And in many cases, that information can be integrated into the accounting product. So the more stuff we can capture at its root source, verify it, do the QC there, and flow it through and as close to real time as possible, the more effective the business information system is, and the more capability you have as an advisor to help that client, head off problems or look at opportunities out there to improve sales and other things like that.
Right. And so on the surface, that makes a lot of sense. And it again, makes sense. We'll just leave it at that. What's the challenge in taking what you've just said and what you just laid out and what you've probably told hundreds of firms? What's the challenge in going from that to implementation? Where do people get stuck?
Yeah, I think what happens is if you have a longtime employee who's done traditional bookkeeping services, they may not be aware of these tools that are out there because they've always done it the same way. They're very comfortable doing it, getting the data from the client, keep punching it in. They're used to always knowing the answer to everything out there. They lock it down and tease it. So they haven't just been exposed to the tools that are out there today. Mm-hmm. And so there's some really good conferences out there that talk specifically about the CAS tech stack. Everything from scaling new heights in the summertime, digital CPA, which is CPA.com's December conference. Intuit has their Connect, AICP has Engage, but it's being exposed to these tools and realizing that they work. And a lot of other firms have already successfully implemented them. So it's just a matter of changing your mindset from doing after the fact accounting to developing an integrated accounting suite. And again, if you look at the core accounting product that your clients use, usually QuickBooks, Xero, sometimes FreshBooks, you start with there, you go to the API library, application program interface library. Usually the firms have to adopt a machine transfer tool. Right Networks owns a product called Transaction Pro that's probably one of the QuickBooks favorites from taking data out of any application and plugging it in. And then making sure you have some kind of presentation software of the financials. You know, what I mean by that is if you're a QuickBooks firm, you might use a product like QVinci. That's a popular reporting system. If you're a medium and larger size firm and you want to develop custom dashboards and reporting, you know, Tableau and Domo are probably the sweethearts of the fintech, the financial technology marketplace. Inside of accounting firms, we're seeing a lot more firms focus on using Microsoft's Power Business Intelligence or Power BI.
Yep.
And I think in the long run, I think Power BI is going to win, particularly as Microsoft rolls out the Copilot capabilities, where instead of you learning how to become a programmer in Power BI, you'll actually be able to generate reports by saying, hey, Power BI, analyze this list of transactions and sort them by date and find out who my biggest vendors are, and then put it in a table. That capability, though, that generative AI chat capability we're seeing happen in the Chat GPT, Jasper, Bard space is going to be integrated into our standard Excel and accounting products.
Right. And what you just said, right, that example would take, a minute, right?
Oh, it's seconds. The scary thing, I just taught a class on Chat GPT, the transition of artificial intelligence into firms. And what's amazing is people are blown away that when you do a query, it starts building right away. And then you say, narrow it down, and it does it right there in front of you. And so it's important to tell the audience that ChatGPT you have to put guardrails on it and educate your people on the risks of it. Because it's bad at math. It has some inherent biases in there. And in the absence of knowing an answer, it will hallucinate a very vivid answer that sounds repetitive as heck. But it's totally made up. So it's very important that you educate all of your employees, play with the tool, but never, ever, ever put in client data and anything with PII, personally identifiable information, that you don't want everyone else to know. We actually think it's a violation of our ethics code if you do that. So we got to make sure we put the guardrails on it. And that's why I believe the accounting providers, the application providers will deliver that to us, a secure, safe way to build that advisory, I'll say, process into our firms.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. And I think that's key. Because a few times I have fooled around with it. It is fast, right? Super fast, gets you results, but you definitely have to verify. And but if nothing else, it gives you can at least get an outline to start working from.
Absolutely. And like what you're seeing is you have industry experts out there like Jason Statz and Hector Garcia, who are educating clients on how to use ChatGPT safely with client accounting data in a protected environment. And we see also companies like, Intuit rolling out their GenOS. And I think what'll happen is the major players like Thomson, CCH, Intuit will provide us solutions that are packaged for us, that are secure, that don't expose the client data and don't use it or, mine it for developing their own, language model.
So, right. Do you hear Zoom recently changed their terms of use? Did you see all that?
Yeah, it's crazy. I saw an article last week in ZDNet that said that 75% of the companies in the U.S. have a policy prohibiting ChatGPT. But what you got to remember when this all started last November, and by January we heard about it, but we got busy in tax season, so we didn't pay attention. But during that time frame, Italy banned it, and then they understood it and backed off. The New York school district banned it, then they understood it, put guardrails on it, and backed off. And I think that's what has to happen for us accountants. We have to understand it and back off. So I apologize for going off track. I know you wanted to talk about cloud
No,
and
no, it's all together, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
certainly it's all impacting the profession at one level or
yeah,
another.
and everything has to be in the cloud to work together.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like Right Networks, we offer a variety of solutions. Like if you want just your client's QuickBooks to be in the cloud, we host QuickBooks Desktop. And there's, even though we're trying to get people to work on online, there's still over 2 million QuickBooks Desktop users that will not give it up. And, we all think like we're incredulous, like why don't they go? Well, what we don't understand, or after you dig down, you understand that many of these companies have a ancillary application. It could be like a restaurant with a older point of sale, works with QuickBooks Desktop. So if they want to be in the cloud, they have to use, a hosted provider, but it has to be with desktop. And we see that like small not-for-profits, they might have a specific member database that only links in with QuickBooks Desktop, and they can't afford an online version. So by putting it into hosted QuickBooks Desktop, they can get all that. And that's, like I said, that's the first service that most people know Right Networks for.
Right.
But we also have an accounting and tax cloud, which hosts the most popular tax software applications for small and medium firms. And then the added benefit of that, it gets integrated around a secure packet to also include, for instance, the Microsoft Office suite. So you have client collaboration, all that. It includes access to products like Smart Vault for document management, Foxit for PDF management. So we build that suite so it's a secure that, with multi-factor authentication, all the tools you need to log in securely into that group. And then for larger firms, firms that are 20 members or more that might have a mixed suite of applications, Right Networks hosts a product called Cloud Premier. And Cloud Premier supports over 5,000 accounting applications. And you're going like, I didn't even know there's 5,000 accounting applications.
Yeah.
What you have to realize, though, is if you go back just on, let's say, a tax program, you have the 1040, the 1120, 1120S, 706, 709. You have all the states, you have all the counties, and then you go back 7 years. And you do that multiple times with different applications out there. And that's why I think, Right Networks has grown so much, is because we're able to take all those applications and put them into a centralized environment. So when you log on, you think it's all in one cloud in one place, but if you have research in one place, it goes there. If you have payroll in another cloud provider, it goes there. All the apps, including your QuickBooks Desktop, your on-prem Lacert, your on-prem, CCH Practice, it all works together in the Cloud Premier environment. So it appears to be like it's your own network, with the distinct difference that it works 7/24, any place, anytime you can get an internet connection.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I often have thought about just what like QBO and zero adoption, how that's impacted like Right Networks' business, but it sounds like it's all been positive.
Yeah, we have a lot of people in our accounting and tax cloud that they promote QBO and put it in all their clients, but they might be using, for instance, Lacert, or like they're a CCH engagement firm, and there's no web-based alternative to run those products. Or unfortunately, a lot of firms try to do it themselves. And what they don't realize is a lot of the accounting applications are Windows-like. They're not true Windows applications. So when you run them on a pure Windows environment, they don't run quite the same when you're working remotely. And we also know that, like RDS, remote desktop servers that Microsoft offers, during COVID, the FBI put a notice that I think it was 80% of all ransomware breaches came through these remote RDS connections that were out there. They had security warnings against that. And so by going to a cloud provider that focuses on accounting firms, but has a secure shell around that, make sure that all the data is encrypted, all the traffic's encrypted. And that, like I said, Right Networks is one of the leading providers that focuses exclusively in the accounting environment. We understand how important it is during tax season that you have 7/24, coverage. I mean, that extended hours on weekends. And a lot of people who try to build it themselves, they lose out on, first of all, not having a consistent remote access experience, which causes frustration. Second of all, they don't have a secure platform that's out there.
And that, yeah, and security was the next thing I did want to touch on just before we wrap up. And as you consult with firms, and again, hundreds of firms, right?
Yep.
What would you call the overall security of accounting firms? How are we doing? What's our grade?
Well, for firms that do their own IT, unless they're a SOC 2 certified firm, I give them a D or an F. I go in and actually ask the question, okay, are you doing your own security? Yes. How much time do you have allocated to security? Well, I go webinars. How much training do you actually have to focus on this? And what we find is they're woefully undereducated, or the capabilities just aren't there to properly secure the infrastructure, particularly today as the hackers are using automated tools to find out as soon as there's a 0-day vulnerability on any piece of equipment, whether it's the browser, whether it's your Wi-Fi router, doesn't matter what it is, you need to patch those things right away. And internally, the firms just don't have the resources to do that. Most of the firms, particularly those that are under 100 members, are understaffed from an IT perspective, and the priority is always getting the work out, which tends to be tax and accounting applications. And so the minimum requirement for firms today should be that anyone who logs in is required to do multi-factor authentication. So that's using a Duo or an Okta to connect, to verify who they are. They should be utilizing a secure channel, a VPN of some kind, to be able to connect to the resources so that their login and password is encrypted both ways out there. They should all be required to have security awareness training. And then from an enterprise infrastructure, they need to have intrusion detection, prevention, true disaster recovery plans. And that's what I find is when we see firms develop their own IT, we find that they're woefully inadequate in their own disaster recovery plan. If they had an outage, whether it is a natural disaster like a fire or a flood, or their servers breaking or being stolen, something like that, they're looking at 1 to 2 weeks to recover, compared to being the cloud providers where it's always on, and it's backed up in real time. And so we just see that firms talk the talk on security, but they don't actually follow through. And now, it's a requirement. Anybody who processes a tax return electronically is required by law to have a written information security plan. And we find that, like, I surveyed at a large regional meeting recently, and about 60% of the firms said they had a written information security plan, which the FTC safeguard rules requires as law as of June 9th. That was the last extension. But they're all required to have that in place. And we find that, it's the job of the IT person or the technology person, and it just doesn't get done that's out there. And that's one of the big benefits of all the cloud providers. They have enterprise class teams that are monitoring activity, that if someone inadvertently clicks on a phishing email, you notify the team, and they have processes to immediately compartmentalize the damage to that machine. In our Cloud Premier, you just go to another machine, log on, and go back to work while we clean up your existing machine that's out there. And I think that's one of the big benefits of the cloud providers is they put in solutions today, enterprise class, that the Fortune 500 use, and there's no way a small practitioner or a small firm can afford those tools. So if there's firms that are still out there and they want to maintain their own network and all that, we strongly, strongly encourage you to go to an outsourced security managed provider, someone who does this for firms and companies, and they monitor your 100% of your traffic, your data, all of that there. Just because the hackers don't even have to be good anymore. They basically rent software tools. They pick a target, a niche, just like we pick niches in our firms. They go after either CPA firms or law firms or medical practices. There's a API listing of library in the dark web of applications that are targeted towards accounting professionals. There's even experts that go after firms that are Intuit or Thomson or CCH, because once they get in there, they know what directories are there, where the data is, and be able to extract that data as quickly as possible so they can invoke the ransomware.
Wow, that's very scary. So we're going to
Oh,
end with we're going to turn you into a teacher for a moment, and that way you're already a teacher, right? You're trained, so you're teaching all the time. So now we're gonna do the bad part of teaching, and that's grading our students. It's not the bad part, but the
the
part that
reality.
students sometimes. So I'm gonna break it down by firm size, and you're gonna grade their IT and their security. We'll just call it awareness, right?
Okay.
And so up to 10 members.
Okay, we find small firms are so busy working and taking care of their client stuff that they barely pay attention to the security side at all. They might, at that size, they usually don't have an IT person. It's usually a person on staff
Yep.
who installs all the updates and maintenance, but they have a person come in once in a while. So we find out they're the ones that probably have the highest risk to zero-day vulnerabilities, just because they don't update the software. They're not aware that there's Windows errors. There's not aware of your iPad, your Apple iOS or your Android hasn't been updated. Your Netgear router, that it's been compromised. They don't know that. So they're probably got the lowest score. But the firms, I have some boutique firms, I'll tell you, that are probably in that group that have 100% of their stuff in the cloud. And basically, they don't have to worry about disaster recovery planning. They don't have to worry about IT budgeting because they look at IT as plumbing. It's a utility. Just
Right.
like you pay for your water, you pay for your electricity, they pay for their technology as a package deal. And so when that includes security, those are the A clients, but I'd say the vast majority, they don't even know about it. And that's what we're missing.
All right. So we're going to give them an F. So
Yeah.
most of the small firms up to 10, we're even going to stretch that up to probably 25. You think, is that a fair, is that a
Well,
fair
there's a
stretch?
point, there's an interesting mix we see between 15 and 25.
Okay.
There's usually a person who has a little bit more time dedicated to technology issues, and they're
Okay.
monitoring information. They're going to conferences. They're watching webinars on this stuff, and they're bringing back ideas to their firm. And so those firms, um, I'll give them a C or a D. I mean, because the firm, we see firms in the cloud totally at that point, just the same thing. Those are fine. But we also see firms that have their own networks used a managed security provider. And that might be like if you look at a large city, there's usually a book of lists of the top 10 solution providers out there. And they usually have like managed security providers. If there's 10 in a city, chances are if you're hired one of those companies, they have locked down your infrastructure. They've implemented VPNs, multi-factor authentication. They're monitoring your network. They're monitoring your backup and disaster recovery. And if you have that security there, I would give you a higher score. But when we go in and meet with the firms and we ask them that question, they're like, well, no, I don't have a security provider. I have an IT guy who comes in, once a week and looks at our stuff and answers our problems, or they might dial in when we have a immediate need, but it's not a constant presence, which is required today.
All right. Okay. All right. So our small firm, we're going to call small, up to 15, probably are getting Fs. If I go 15 to, we'll go 15 to 100. We have a little bit bigger gap there.
Well, I'd say 15 to 50 there, above
Okay.
50 to 100. We tend to see a dedicated IT person, and
Okay.
those firms realize the majority of their applications. We start getting into having hosted workflow, hosted document management. And so they're used to having hosted applications, and half those firms also have a managed security provider with their IT company. That's where like Cloud Premier kind of really, below that Accounting Cloud does great. Above that, Cloud Premier really provides a holistic solution that is not only your maintenance, but all the security components there. And then once you get over 100 members, you tend to have an IT director that has a team of 2 or 3 people, which at least one person is dedicated to security.
Okay.
And as long as they've got enterprise class tools and know how to maintain and monitor them, we would give them, an A or B score like we have that cloud. So you see that the more advanced firms that have more in an enterprise infrastructure that are aware of security, those are the people that get the A's and B's. As you go down, people that manage their own networks, they quickly fall off the quality perspective just because they're understaffed. The further you go down, they're too busy dealing with accounting.
Right. And don't have the revenues to support it. Right.
So, correct. Yeah. So they're buying a cheap, a lot of times in the really small firms, we see the freeware software, that the free VPN, the free antivirus. Yeah. And the downside to that is who's giving you that free software? Right. Has it been compromised? And the hackers know that you give something away for free, people will try it out, and they don't realize they're invoking, or introducing the opportunity for malware. It's kind of like the USB drives. Like, no one should be touching a USB drive for a flash drive between you and a client or anybody. If you find one, throw it away, because hackers found that was one of the easiest things to compromise. Just by plugging it in and searching it, you've compromised the machine. So at Right Networks, we don't allow anybody to plug in any USB at all. I mean, you can plug in a microphone or a camera, but no data storage device, because we know it's such a risk out there.
Wow. Well, there we go. So no USB,
Never,
USB data storage, period.
No. I mean, if you're doing it at home and you're the only one that's touching your own USB, yeah, that's fine. But if you find one in the parking lot, a client mails you one, or you're at a client's office and they say, can you give me a backup? And they hand you one, don't take it, because they can be easily compromised. Instead, teach all your clients to be 100% digital, to use your portal solution to transfer data to you securely. That's the better solution for everyone. And that's something you should be really promoting amongst your listeners, that teach your clients to be 100% digital using your tools, and that'll be the most secure, supportable environment you can have.
That's great. Well, that's a great way to finish it. We're going to end on that. There's nothing else that needs to be said. So, Roman, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. And I'm sure we'll bump into you at a show somewhere.
I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.